You probably think that control in a relationship looks obvious. A man who yells, isolates, or humiliates his partner. But what if I told you that most control doesn't look like control at all? That many men use subtle psychological tactics that seem harmless at first, but slowly make a woman lose her sense of self, without even realizing it's happening. This is one of the darkest truths revealed by masculine psychology. Many men don't control women with force. They do it with emotional intelligence twisted in the wrong direction. They study your reactions, your patterns, your fears, and then they learn exactly what to say and what to do to stay in control while appearing innocent. It doesn't start with insults. It starts with charm. With a man who seems too good to be true, the one who understands you like no one else and who listens, who cares. At first, he makes you feel safe. He seems emotionally mature, balanced, different from the others. But slowly, that warmth becomes the very thing he uses to keep you attached. Because the truth is, not all manipulation feels like manipulation. Some of it feels like love, attention, and even protection. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Masculine psychology studies have shown that emotional manipulation often hides behind gestures of affection and concern. It's in the way he phrases his advice. It's in the way he praises you only when you behave the way he wants. It's in the way he withdraws affection when you set a boundary. It's never about words, it's about patterns. And those patterns are designed to make you doubt yourself just enough to give him more control. This video isn't about blaming all men. It's about understanding the quiet strategies some use to maintain invisible power. And the most frightening part is that many of these behaviors are socially accepted. They sound like care. They sound like logic. They sound like good communication. But if you listen closely, they're forms of emotional conditioning. Once you start noticing them, everything changes. You'll look back at past relationships and realize that moments you thought were your fault were actually carefully designed reactions. Moments you thought were normal couple arguments were subtle exercises of control. And the sooner you recognize them, the faster you take your power back. Because the first step to breaking manipulation is learning how it hides. And to do that, we're going to expose 5 secret ways men subtly control and manipulate women. 5 patterns that can quietly destroy your confidence, independence, and emotional freedom if you don't see them for what they really are. So stay with me until the end, because once you learn these 5 psychological traps, you'll never see certain behaviors the same way again, and you'll understand how to protect your mind and your heart before someone tries to rewrite your reality piece by piece. I once heard a woman say, "He never raised his voice, but somehow I always felt small." At first, it didn't make sense. How could a man be so calm, so gentle, and still have so much control over her emotions? But the more she spoke, the clearer it became. What she was describing wasn't love. It was a slow psychological erosion. She met him when she was at a vulnerable stage in her life, just out of a difficult breakup, looking for stability, craving someone who would make her feel seen again. He was attentive, patient, and kind. The kind of man who remembers your favorite coffee order, texts "good morning" every day, and asks about your dreams. He seemed emotionally intelligent, like someone who truly understood the depth of a woman's heart, and that's how he earned her trust. But control rarely begins with dominance. It begins with understanding, and using that understanding to shape how you think and react. He would compliment her, but with a hidden purpose. He'd say things like, "You're so much calmer when you're with me," or, "I love how you listen," not like those other women who always argue. It sounded sweet, but over time, those comments began to plant something inside her, a quiet pressure to behave a certain way, to deserve his love. When she disagreed with him, he didn't argue. He sighed. He stayed silent. He said, "I just need space." And that silence felt like punishment. She'd panic, wondering what she'd done wrong, replaying the conversation over and over in her mind. Eventually, she started apologizing for things that weren't her fault, just to stop feeling that cold distance between them. That's one of the first signs of manipulation, when you begin to censor yourself not out of respect, but out of fear of losing peace. When keeping harmony starts to mean losing yourself. He never said, "You can't go out with your friends." Instead, he said, "I just don't feel comfortable with them. They don't seem like good people for you." He said it with concern, with softness. But little by little, she stopped going out. She started staying home more. She told herself she was just respecting his feelings. But what she didn't realize was that she was shrinking her world to fit inside his comfort zone. When she started noticing the imbalance, She tried to talk about it. He smiled and said, "You're overthinking again. You always make problems where there aren't any." And that's when doubt entered. Not about him, but about herself. Because once a manipulative man makes you question your own perception, he no longer needs to control you. You start controlling yourself. That's how emotional manipulation works. It's quiet, polite, and rational. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And before you know it, you're walking on eggshells around someone who claims to love you. Masculine psychology reveals that these tactics often come from insecurity, not confidence. Some men use them because they fear losing control. They fear emotional chaos, rejection, or vulnerability. But instead of dealing with those fears, they project them onto their partners. They build an emotional system where the woman feels responsible for keeping everything calm, even when the storm isn't hers to fix. The woman in that story stayed with him for 3 years. She thought she was helping him heal. She thought that being patient, understanding, and loving would eventually make things better. But she didn't realize that his calmness was her silence. His peace was her exhaustion. And when she finally left, she wasn't angry. She was empty. Because manipulation doesn't destroy you with pain. It destroys you with confusion. You lose your ability to trust your instincts, your feelings, your memories. You lose yourself slowly, in the name of love. But once she began to study how masculine psychology works, how some men use emotional awareness not to connect, but to control, she began to see the patterns. And once she saw them, she could never unsee them again. Now that you understand how subtle manipulation begins, it's time to expose the 5 secret ways men use psychology to quietly gain control over women, and how these patterns can shape your emotions without you even noticing. Each one of these methods hides behind normal behavior, which is why they're so dangerous. Let's start with the first. First, the protector disguise. It starts with care, but ends with control. He tells you he just wants what's best for you. He says things like, "I don't think that friend really supports you," or "I just want to keep you safe." It feels loving, it feels protective, but over time, that protection turns into a cage. Because the moment a man starts deciding what's best for you, instead of supporting what you think is best, your independence begins to fade. He hides behind the image of the caring partner, but his real goal is to make you emotionally dependent on his approval. And once he becomes your emotional compass, he controls your direction. Second, the subtle critic. He doesn't insult you, he helps you. He says things like, "I'm just being honest," or "I don't mean to hurt you," but then comes a comment about your clothes, your tone, your behavior, your choices. Each comment alone seems small. You brush it off. But together, they start to form a pattern that erodes your confidence piece by piece. You start second-guessing your decisions, asking for his opinion on everything, just to avoid feeling wrong. That's how manipulation works. Not with loud criticism, but with gentle corrections that make you feel like you always need improvement. He becomes the judge of your worth, and you start looking to him for validation. Third, the emotional withdrawal. This one is one of the most powerful psychological controls, because it uses your own attachment against you. When you say something he doesn't like, or when you set a boundary he doesn't shout, he becomes distant, quiet. He gives you the cold shoulder for hours, maybe days. You feel the tension in the air, the emotional disconnection that hurts more than any argument. And eventually you give in. You apologize for things that weren't your fault. You break your own boundaries just to bring peace back. That's how he trains you, with silence. Your brain starts associating disagreement with disconnection, and that's how emotional obedience is created. In psychology, this is called intermittent reinforcement, the same technique used to train behavior by rewarding compliance and punishing independence. Fourth, the hero-victim switch. This one confuses your empathy. When you confront him about something, he flips the situation until you feel guilty for bringing it up. You tell him, "You hurt me when you ignored me," and he responds, "I can't believe you think I'd ever do that on purpose, after everything I've done for you." Now he's not the problem. He's the victim. You find yourself comforting the man who just hurt you. This is emotional inversion. He shifts the spotlight from your pain to his suffering, and because you care, you surrender the argument. Men who master this switch often appear emotionally open, but it's a defense mechanism designed to keep control while avoiding responsibility. Fifth, the rewriting of reality. This is the final and most dangerous form of manipulation. It's when he makes you doubt your own memory, perception, or logic, a psychological tactic known as gaslighting. You say, "You promised you'd come," and he says, I never said that. You're imagining things. You point out something he did and he says, that's not what happened. Slowly, your mind begins to bend around his version of reality. You start keeping screenshots, notes, messages, just to prove to yourself that what you remember is real. But even then, a part of you wonders, what if he's right? That's how deep this control goes. Gaslighting doesn't just change how you see him, it changes how you see yourself. And once you no longer trust your own perception, he doesn't need to argue anymore. He owns your reality. These 5 methods, protection, criticism, withdrawal, inversion, and reality distortion, form a complete system of emotional control. They can coexist, rotate, or appear in cycles, and the man using them doesn't always do it consciously. Some learn these behaviors as survival mechanisms in childhood. Others use them deliberately, as tools of dominance disguised as love. But the effect on a woman's mind is always the same: confusion, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. When you're under that kind of influence, you start questioning yourself before you even speak. You analyze every text before you send it. You read his tone like a code, trying to keep him happy, calm, satisfied, because peace becomes addictive. But peace that depends on your silence isn't peace, it's submission. Once you see these patterns clearly, you begin to notice them everywhere, in conversations, in apologies, in promises. And that awareness is your armor, because the truth is, manipulation only works when you don't recognize it. Once you can name it, it loses its power. The most dangerous part of emotional manipulation is that it doesn't break you in one moment. It wears you down slowly, thought by thought, doubt by doubt. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already learned to live in a version of yourself that doesn't belong to you anymore. When a woman stays in a relationship ruled by subtle control, she begins to lose her inner voice. At first, she silences it just to avoid arguments. Then she silences it because she's convinced it's wrong. And eventually she forgets she ever had one. That's how emotional conditioning works. You adapt. You start believing that walking on eggshells is normal, that relationships are supposed to be full of tension, uncertainty, and guilt. You start thinking love must always come with confusion, but it doesn't. That's just what you've been taught to accept. The consequences are deeper than heartbreak. When your mind is constantly adjusting to someone else's version of reality, your nervous system never rests. You live in a state of hypervigilance, always scanning his tone, his words, his silences. You stop living for yourself and start living to prevent conflict. And that's when control turns into something much darker: dependence. Dependence isn't just emotional, it's neurological. Every time he withdraws affection and then gives it back, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical that reinforces addictive behavior. You begin to crave the highs after the lows. That cycle makes leaving feel impossible because the pain and relief become intertwined. You tell yourself, he's not that bad, he's just stressed. Maybe it's my fault. But deep down, your body already knows the truth. It's exhausted. It's warning you. And the longer you ignore that exhaustion, the more you lose touch with who you were before him. Some women spend years trying to fix the man who's breaking them. They read books, go to therapy, change themselves, thinking that if they love harder, things will go back to how they were at the beginning. But the beginning was the trap. It was never real. It was the hook designed to keep you attached to an illusion. And the most painful part? Manipulative men rarely apologize. They simply adjust their strategy. When you start noticing the manipulation, they become softer, more vulnerable, more loving. For a while, they make promises, they shed tears, they talk about change. But once they feel safe again, the same patterns return. Because their goal was never connection. It was control dressed as connection. Masculine psychology teaches that this pattern repeats because it feeds a man's ego in the most primitive way. It makes him feel irreplaceable. When a woman sacrifices her peace for him, he feels powerful. But what he doesn't realize is that power built on someone's silence is temporary and empty. If you stay in this dynamic too long, you begin to forget what genuine love feels like. You start confusing peace with numbness. You start believing that walking away means failure. But walking away isn't failure. It's the first step toward emotional clarity. Because manipulation only thrives where confusion lives. The moment you choose clarity, the illusion starts to collapse. And yes, leaving can be terrifying. You'll miss him. You'll miss the good moments. But remember, missing the good moments doesn't mean you belong in the bad ones. You can love someone and still recognize that they're toxic for your growth. You can have empathy for their pain without sacrificing your sanity. Every minute you stay in a manipulative relationship, you lose a little piece of your authenticity. But every moment you start reclaiming your truth, no matter how small, you begin to take your power back. That's the urgency here, to stop waiting for him to change and start focusing on healing yourself. Because once you rebuild your self-trust, no manipulation can reach you again. The hardest part is that you'll never get closure from a manipulator. They don't give closure, they give confusion. Your closure will come from acceptance, accepting that you were manipulated, but that you are no longer powerless. You are now aware, and awareness is liberation. The moment you realize you are being controlled isn't a moment of weakness, Ender. It's the beginning of your freedom. Because once you see the pattern, you can never unsee it. You begin to understand that what felt like love was just emotional leverage disguised as connection. You begin to see that every "I'm doing this because I care" was really "I'm doing this because I want control." And that realization hurts. It shakes everything you thought you knew about love. But that pain is also the doorway to something powerful, the return of your voice. You see, the women who rise after manipulation aren't the same as before. They become sharper, wiser. They learn to listen to their instincts again, that quiet voice that was silenced for too long. They stop apologizing for being too much and start asking, "Why did I ever accept being so little?" They rebuild themselves not to be harder, but to be clearer, because clarity is what protects your heart, not walls. Masculine psychology shows that when a woman regains her clarity, she becomes impossible to manipulate, not because men stop trying, but because her mind no longer negotiates with confusion. She sees patterns, she recognizes emotional traps, and she steps away before the damage begins. That's real strength, the kind that doesn't scream, but stands firmly in truth. If you've ever found yourself in a relationship where love felt like walking through fog, where you questioned your own reality, or where peace always came at the cost of your voice, please understand, you're not broken. You were trained to doubt yourself. But you can unlearn that. You can take back your power thought by thought, decision by decision. It starts with one act of self-honesty, admitting that love should never make you feel smaller. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. It doesn't punish honesty, and it doesn't make you guess how to stay safe. Real love expands you. It feels calm, not anxious. It feels like truth, not guessing. And once you've tasted that difference, you'll never settle for emotional manipulation again. So if you're listening to this and you feel that quiet knot in your stomach, that sense that something in your relationship doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. That's not fear. That's your intuition speaking. It's the part of you that still remembers who you were before the manipulation began. Listen to it. Trust it. Because the moment you start trusting your own perception again, no one can twist it against you. And if you've already walked away from someone who tried to control you, even if you're still healing, be proud of that decision. It means you chose clarity over comfort. It means you chose to stop shrinking yourself just to fit inside someone else's control. That's not weakness. That's courage. So take a deep breath, hold your head high, and remind yourself of this truth. No one who truly loves you will ever need to control you. They will never weaponize your empathy, silence your boundaries, or rewrite your reality to feel powerful. They will meet you as an equal. Not as a project, not as a possession, but as a partner. And that's the kind of love you deserve. If this message resonated with you, don't let it fade when the video ends. Keep this awareness alive. Share it with another woman who might need to hear it today. Because you never know whose mind or heart could be set free by simply understanding what manipulation really looks like. And most importantly, promise yourself one thing. Never confuse control for love again. Because once a woman understands the psychology behind manipulation, she doesn't fall for it. She rises above it.